again, some typical attendance manager tasks. These are all the things that we just went over on what we'll be able to do once we complete this course. I hear some people just connecting. So if everyone can make sure that they have us on mute, that would be great. So now I'm on page 3 in your book. In page 3, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be playing the role of Helen Martin in our training database. Our training database is set up for a company called MVP Athletics. And Helen Martin is a store manager. So she has a group of employees who are assigned to her. And the way we have set up our store managers is we want them to have the ability to view at-a-glance employees with attendance events, and she needs to act on them rather quickly. She's going to be able to view employee attendance details and history with just a few clicks, update the attendance-related information in the time card, such as adding things like doctor's notes or comments to exceptions and pay codes, generate and send attendance documents from the employee's attendance record, such as written violations and terminations, and record the attendance event outcomes quickly. Now, this is everything that my store manager can do. Okay? Now, you guys get to decide and pick and choose what do you want your store managers to be able to do. You're going to pick and choose who are your attendance administrators going to be. So it could be a department manager, could be a supervisor, could be a specific attendance administrator that's sitting in your HR department or your benefit department. You get to pick and choose who your attendance administrators are going to be and what they should have access to. Okay? So if there's anything here that you're like, I would never want my department managers to be able to do that, that's up to you. You can take it away. So what I'm going to do in the chat window is I'm going to enter Helen Martin's username and password. So her username is going to be Helen Martin, all one word, no space in between, and it is not case sensitive. And the password is going to be automate1 exclamation point. This is case sensitive, so it's a capital A, everything else lowercase, number 1 exclamation point at the end. You might want to jot that down. Okay. So we're going to now go into the page 4, the overview of the attendance tools and workforce dimensions. So we can go right to page 5. What you're going to see on page 5 is all the different types of tools that come with your attendance module. Okay? And what we're going to do is we're going to go through and look at each one of these tools and talk about what they do. Now what I want to do is I want to give you guys a heads up that going through your workbook here, there are only 4 exercises. There aren't many. This is one of those modules that really, really automates everything that you may have done manually before. The system does it all for you. So if any of you have ever tracked attendance manually, you know it's a lot of work. I've been here at Kronos for 20 years now, and before I came to work for Kronos, I was a Kronos customer, and I had 165,000 employees. And we were tracking attendance manually on little index cards for 165,000 employees. I kid you not. So going with attendance with Kronos, it is amazing how it automates pretty much everything. So that's why there are very few exercises. So as we go through this, I'm going to give you guys a choice. You can either sit back and enjoy the show until we get to those 4 exercises, or if you really want to get into the system and get some hands-on and you want to play around with me as we go through this, please feel free to do that too. I'm going to leave it up to you. Whichever way you want to go through this class is fine with me. Okay? So I'm going to leave this up as far as this page, and you guys can, again, look at it in your materials. And what I'm going to do is switch over to my tenant. So if you would prefer to switch over to your tenant as well, feel free to do so. Or like I said, if you want to sit back and enjoy the show, you can do that too. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to log in as Helen Martin. So again, it's all one word, Helen Martin, automate one exclamation point. Now, when we log in as Helen Martin, we're looking at her home page, okay? When we look at her home page, she has these tiles on her home page, and she has some that are related to attendance. So we're going to be talking about these. But if we follow page 5, and we take a look at the very first option, is the Control Center alerts. Well, where you're going to find your control center, if you look in the upper right-hand corner of your screen, you see a bell, and it says 72. I'd like you to go ahead and click the bell. This is going to tell you that you have 72 notifications. Now, if it were me and I were training my department managers, I would say you need to look at this every single day. And when you look at these notifications, you need to address these notifications and mark them as red and bring that number down to 0. So should you ever have 72 notifications? No, you shouldn't. Okay? They should be looking at this on a daily basis. That's what I would recommend, and that's how I would train my department managers or my attendance administrators, whoever they may be. So I should never have 72. Now, when you're looking at your control center, number 1, you get to decide what type of notifications are your department managers going to receive, right? Who, again, are my assistant attendance administrators. So when I'm looking at my control center, these could be notifications about timekeeping, about attendance, about leave, about employees requesting time off, so many different types of things. So you can see the first one that we're looking at says timekeeping Helen Martin, and it tells us that Helen Martin has an unexcused absence on 7/12. So if I were a manager, what I would do is I would use this notification and I would go into her time card and address this issue. Now, even though it says that it is a timekeeping issue, as we know from our other classes when we're talking about attendance, a lot of the information that comes over to attendance is coming from our time cards. So even though it says timekeeping, that would probably affect my attendance as well. So it tells us that she has an unexcused absence. That means she was scheduled to come in on a certain day, and she didn't, right? And we are logged in as Helen Martin. The next one we see is Howard Edwards. Howard Edwards also has an unexcused absence on 7/12. So what I'd like you to do, looking at the notification for Howard Edwards, you'll notice at the bottom of that square, you have 3 options: mark as red, delete, and go to. What I'd like you to do is click the go to. When you do, that's going to take you directly into his time card. Now remember, that notification was giving us an alert for 7/12. So if we go down to Friday 7/12, you can see that it looks like he has these red bars, and if you mouse over them, it says unexcused absence for the 9th, the 10th, the 11th, and the 12th. So I have an alert for every single day, right? So he's taking up at least 4 of those out of the 72. Now, if we go to Friday the 12th, and let's go ahead and say that he took a sick day on the 12th. So if we go to the pay code cell and click, you'll get a drop down. And when I bring down the drop down, let's choose a pay code of sick. Then in the amount, let's just enter the number 8. Okay. And then we can do a right click on the 8 hours. And you should get a pop-up that says pay code actions. And here we can click comments. So now we're going to see this comment table over on the right-hand side. Bring down the drop-down where it says select a comment. And let's say that he did have a doctor's note. And then at the very bottom, we're going to click Apply. And in the upper right-hand corner of his time card, we can go ahead and save our changes. So that's what your managers should be doing on a day-to-day basis. So now that we've addressed this issue, if you go in the upper right-hand corner and click your bell, and you go down to that second square for Howard Edwards, we're done with this. We've addressed it. Go ahead and click Mark Red. And now you'll notice in the upper right-hand corner, the number 72 went down to 71. Okay? So again, our managers should be doing this on a day-to-day basis. So what we see in the time cards, exceptions, pay codes, exceptions and comments, and pay codes and comments, those are the things that are going to affect attendance. Okay? Now, what we can do in the upper right-hand corner, click the bell. That's going to close our control center. And in the upper left-hand corner next to the Kronos logo, go ahead and click the home. That's going to take us back to our home screen. Okay? So that, again, is our control center. But it could include notifications about everything and anything. Now, the next thing that we see on page 5 is the Manage Attendance tile. So that's right on her home page, Manage Attendance, and it says two policy actions are required. So instead of me going through the entire control center, if I'm looking for things that have to do with attendance, I can use this tile instead. This tile very, very quickly is giving me alert that, hey, you've got 2 people who have actions. Well, what is an action? An action is when an employee has so many points or so many occurrences that they've hit a certain balance, and now they're receiving maybe a verbal warning or a written warning or a suspension or termination, whatever types of actions that you have. So we can see that we have 2 people, David Royce, and if you bring down the drop-down, we also have Philip Smith. So David has a 1-day suspension. Philip has a verbal warning. So Helen Martin needs to take care of these actions right away. Some of you may have policies that say if an action has been triggered, it has to be delivered within 48 hours, otherwise it's obsolete. Some of you may have a policy like that. Some of you may not. So when you're using this attendance tile, let's say that in this action it says David Royce has a 1-day suspension. I'd like you to click the word go right next to him, right next to his name. And that's going to open a slider on the right-hand side for details. So it's going to say, yep, he has an action required. His action is a 1-day suspension. It gives you the name of the policy that he's assigned to. It's telling you that there is a document attached to the action. So there's a suspension letter. I could complete the action if I already printed out the letter, sat down with David, went over it, signed it, but I haven't done that yet, so I'm not going to complete it yet. And if I scroll down, I'm also going to see the incident or incidences that cause that action. So he's getting a 1-day suspension because he had a no-call, no-show on July 1st. But I'm like, you know, I really want to see more detail. So at the very bottom, you can click See Full Attendance Details. We click on that. Now we're actually in the attendance detail page. And you can choose whatever time frame you'd like, and you will be able to see the exact details day by day. So we'll come back to this in just a little bit. Let's go in the upper left, and let's click the house again. Now we're back to the home page. So going back to that Manage Attendance tile, another way that you could use the tile is right below David Royce's name. It says Go to Attendance Details for. So this would allow you to bring down the drop-down and I would see all the employees that I have access to, and I could select an employee. So I'd like you to select David again. And then if you click Go, that's going to take you directly to attendance details. You're going to bypass that detail slider on the right-hand side of your screen. Okay? Let's go ahead and click the home again. And there's a third way to use this Manage Attendance tile. At the very bottom, it says Go to Attendance. I'd like you to click on that arrow. And what this is going to do is it's going to take you to the next option that you see on page 5, the attendance page. Sometimes we refer to this as a landing page. It didn't take us into the attendance editor yet. It's kind of an in-between. So it's a landing page. Sometimes people call it a data view because technically it is a data view. So what this does is it gives us two groupings, action required and then all others. Now, if I didn't have any employees who had actions, that group wouldn't show up. So right now it says, hey, you've got 2 people who have actions that are required. And if you click the arrow, it's going to expand it and show you who those 2 people are. Then you can also expand all others, and this is everybody else that Helen Martin has access to. Some of them may not have any points for attendance at all. Some of them might have a few, but not enough to trigger an action. Okay? So this way, Helen Martin can see everyone who reports to her. Now, if you went and put a check mark to the left of David's name again, now from this attendance page, you'll notice in the upper left you have some icons. The first one says attendance. And if you go ahead and click on that, these are actions that you can perform right here from the landing page. And I could have handpicked, a handful of employees, or I could have selected everybody. So maybe I want to do a group edit where I want to apply the rules for everybody. I can do that here from this page. If I wanted to go into the attendance details for David, that's your next icon. So if you click attendance details, again, that takes us right there. Okay? So looking at page 5, we've gone through the Control Center alerts, the Manage Attendance tile, the attendance page that we were just looking at, and now we're in attendance details. So when you're looking at attendance details, in the upper left you have a series of icons, and you could apply the rules here too. But now that you're in attendance for David, applying the rules, you're only going to apply them to David. Notice you also have an icon where you could go back to the landing page. Maybe you want to select somebody else or another group of people. So we have a lot of icons up here. We're going to talk about them as we go through class. And then in the upper right, just be aware, by default, I'm looking at the last 90 days. And that can be changed. You can change that default to be whatever you want it to be. And then, of course, you could also click on the calendar and you could choose whatever you want. So down below, we're seeing information day by day. And for David, if you go down to Monday, July 1st, you can see that he has a daily summary balance where he started the day with 0 points and he ended the day in 2. You can see that on that day, he had a no call, no show. And what my company is doing is they're tracking points. So I can see that for a no call, no show, my employee received 2 points. The one below it is also tracking how much time he's lost. And immediately he received a 1-day suspension. And again, it tells me when it was initiated, and it tells me that, yes, there's a letter that goes with it. Now, when you're looking at attendance details, if I'm a department manager, I really don't know my attendance policy right off the top of my head. I didn't configure the system. But I want to know, why is this happening? It kind of looks like my employee only has 2 points. Why are they getting suspended? What's the policy on this? So what I allow my managers to do, if you go to the no call, no show where my employee received 2 points, go over to the right and I can click the pencil and I can say I want to display the policy. Now they can't make any edits to it. It's viewing access only. So once this loads, they can see the name of it. It's called MVP Athletic Normal Discipline. It's a discipline policy, and it's got a fixed 12-month time period. The points do expire on a fixed 12 months, so they expire on the anniversary date that they incurred. And then underneath that tracking period, you'll notice that there are tabs. If you go ahead and click on the Incident Rule tab, I can see my policy where if my employee calls in sick, they get 0 freebies, they get 1 point, and they do not receive an action. We're going to keep a running total of how many points they have. If they're sick with a doctor's note, they get 99 freebies, and after that, they receive a 0.01. The only reason for the 0.01 is because I couldn't put a 0 in there. What this company is really saying is I want to track how many times you're sick with a doctor's note. You're not going to get a consequence for it, but I want to track how many times it happens. So that's an option. You can do that. If you miss less than half your shift or you take a long lunch, you're going to get 1 freebie. Not one of each, just 1. And then after that, you're going to get a 0.5. No action. Now, if I go down to the no call, no show, it says you get 0 freebies, you get 2 points, and immediately you get an action of a 1-day suspension. Safety violation, you get 0 freebies, you get 2 points, immediately you get a verbal warning. So all the others that don't have an action, we're going to keep a running total. And maybe if you have like 3 points within a month, that's going to trigger an action. That's another type of policy. Okay? So now the manager goes, okay, well now I get it. And in the lower right-hand corner, I can close, and I just close the policy. Okay? So the detail page, a lot of detailed information that we're going to be using later on. The next thing that you're seeing on page 5 is going to be the attendance calendar. In the upper left-hand corner, you can click the icon for calendar. And you can view the same exact information, but in a calendar format. In the upper left-hand corner, you can change your time period. You can scroll month to month. So looking at my information in a calendar format, very, very quickly, I would be able to see if there are any patterns. I just went back to June. So I'd really be able to see, like, you know, does he have a late in every Monday? Does he have an early out every Friday? Right? Very, very quickly, you'd be able to see any patterns that are going on. Notice in the upper right-hand corner, you can also apply the rules right here from the calendar. So you can apply your rules from a lot of places. I can say I want to go back to the attendance details. I can add a new attendance event. We'll talk about that later. I can do that either from the calendar or from attendance details. I could go back to the landing page. I can view different time periods that I might want to bring up the calendar for. I have the show hide. If you click on that, these are the things where you can pick and choose what do you want to see in a calendar. Pretty much everything is selected, but if there's anything that you didn't want to see, you would just uncheck it. If you click in a blank space in your header, that will go away. And you're also going to notice that you're going to see your events not only in a calendar format, but you see them listed over on the right-hand side as well. So your next icon says Hide List. If you wanted to hide that, your calendar gets a little bit bigger. Now you can click on that icon again, brings the events back. And then you also have the Go To icon. So the Go To icon, if you click on it, you might want to go to someone's time card, see what's happening. You might want to go to their people record. You might want to go to reports, right? You get to pick and choose where do you want to go. So that is the calendar. So let's go in the upper left-hand corner and click the Home. Okay? So we went over the Control Center. We went over the Manage Attendance tile. I want to show you one other thing that they don't have listed on page 5, but that's this tile here called My Notifications. This information in My Notifications is the exact same thing that you're going to see in the Control Center. But what it does is it takes those 71 notifications and it breaks them up by category. So if I wanted to come into the system and very quickly I just wanted to look at notifications that had to do with attendance, if you go to attendance where you can see you have 4 notifications, go ahead and click on the word attendance. That will open up your Control Center, but it will take up your whole screen. And you can see the list of categories on the left where we clicked on attendance. And now in the middle, it will only show me those alerts that have to do with attendance. Okay? And you can see the boxes, the options are in the upper right-hand corner. Okay, so you can pretty much do the same thing that you did in the Control Center. So let's go in the upper left-hand corner and click the Home. Now all these things that Helen Martin has access to, again, you get to pick and choose who should have access to what. Maybe you give them access to everything. Maybe you only give them access to the Manage Attendance tile. Maybe you only give them access to the Control Center. That's up to you. And then the last thing that you're seeing on page 5 is the report library and the audits. So if we go in the upper left-hand corner, those 3 lines, go ahead and click on Main Menu. And on that slider on the left, go to Data Views and Reports. And then go ahead and click on your report library. When you come into Reports, in the upper left-hand corner, click on the icon that says Run Report. What that will do is give you a slider on the right, and it shows you all the reports that you have access to, and again, it breaks them up by category. So if you click on Attendance, you can see the attendance reports that you have the option to run. Okay, so this is a hard code report, something you'd run, maybe print out. So we can cancel out of that, and in the upper left, let's go to the Home. And I want to show you something else that they don't necessarily talk about. If you click on Main Menu, and under Data Views and Reports, click on the Data View Library. These are your data views. These are kind of like online analysis reports. I don't have to run them or print them out. I can get information at any time. So you'll notice that I do have a category for attendance. I have 2 attendance data views, but you can modify these. You could also create your own from scratch if you wanted to. That's a whole nother class. But if you go ahead and click on Attendance Balance Summary, this is showing me all of the employees that report to me. In the upper left, it's showing me information about today. And I can see how much time each employee has lost, and I can show you how many points each employee has. And you can sort these columns, and you can add totals and calculations and do all that great stuff. So me personally, I rather look at a data view than run a hard printout of a report. But that's up to you. Now, if you go back to the upper left-hand corner, see where it says Attendance Balance Summary? It has a drop-down. And if you click the drop-down, it shows you all of those data views, so you don't have to go back to that screen. You can select them from here. Click on Attendance Audit page. There was also an audit button in the attendance detail page, so you could click on audits there too. It will show you the exact same thing. So if you look at David, it's only showing us David because David's the only one that has edits been made. So if you expand David and then expand the event by clicking on those arrows, anytime anyone makes a change to the attendance details and they save it, you will then see a line item in the audit trail, and you can see exactly what was done and who it was done by. So we can go back in the upper left and again click the Home. So what I'm going to do is bring your materials back up on my screen, so if everyone wants to look at my screen. We've now gone over all of those options that you see on page 5. And if you go to page 6 in your book, there's a knowledge check here. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the answers up on my board. So I know that for many of you, this is the very first time you've ever seen any one of these tools. So as far as this knowledge check, I just think it's a little too soon in the book. Okay, you'll probably be able to fill this out better at the end of the class when we start to use all these tools a little bit more. So again, I put the answers up if you want to just write those down, and then you could refer back to this later on when you're a little bit more familiar with it. And again, please, if at any time you have any questions whatsoever, please send them to me in that chat window. You don't have to wait for me to ask if you have questions. You don't have to wait until the end. If you have any questions at any time, please send them to me right away. Okay, so I'm going to move on. So now we're going to go to lesson 2. We can actually go to page 8 in our book. So what I want to show you is everything that we just went over is listed in your book. So if you don't remember every single thing, I just want you to feel comfortable that this information is in your book. So again, if you look at page 8, you're going to see that we talked about the tiles. I did also go over the notifications. We talked about how to use the tiles. And if you go to page 9, we were talking about the attendance page. And again, technically, it is a data view. We talked about how you could move around. And as far as that go-to icon, it's pretty much no matter where you go, you're going to see that go-to icon. So you can always go to different modules in your system at any time. If you go to page 10, I showed you how you could go into attendance details and how you could view the policy. Again, we only had viewing access only. We couldn't make any edits to it. And then on page 11, we talked about the calendar. We went through all of the icons and how they work, so you have all that information in your book as well. And then when you go to page 12, we talked about the time card. I took you into someone's time card, and we talked about how you could see the red bars, which are your exceptions. The only way that those red bars are going to show up is if you assign your employee to a schedule. So the exceptions that show up let you know if the employee deviated from their schedule. So obviously if they don't have a schedule, the system can't give you that information. You're back to tracking attendance pretty much manually at that point. So in this example, my employee was scheduled to come in at 10. My employee comes in at 11. I get the exception. If I'm in a live time card, I can just mouse over it, and it would tell me that the employee had a late in. So what you guys were doing in your previous classes is we were trying to trigger you with a lot of thoughts and ideas and try to help you gather all of your policy information about attendance to say what type of exceptions and pay codes and comments do you want to see in your time card, and which ones should be part of your attendance policy. So as far as like pay codes, you might have a pay code of vacation, and you say, well, we don't hold that against the employee. I don't want that to go over to attendance. But we have a pay code of sick, and yes, that should go over to attendance, and the employee should receive 2 points. An example that you saw in your previous class is maybe now you're talking with your managers or supervisors, and you hear one of your managers say, well, yeah, if my employee calls in sick and they don't have any sick time left, yeah, I let them use their vacation time. And now you're like, you do what? What do you let them do? Because vacation's not part of my attendance policy. So now I might go back and add to my attendance policy that if they take vacation and the manager adds a comment that they were really sick, I want that to go over to attendance. But vacation without a comment doesn't go over to attendance. Okay? So again, you get to pick and choose what are you pulling over from the time card, And then we'll also talk later on about how you could also allow manual events in attendance that may not come from the time card. An example that you saw in your previous class was the safety violation. They weren't wearing the right equipment or the right uniform or something. That doesn't come from the time card. That could be a manual event entered into attendance. Okay? So very important that your managers are making edits to the time cards on a daily basis, and that they're making the appropriate corrections, that they're using the appropriate pay codes and comments. The exceptions are triggered automatically, but again, I could add a comment as to why did the employee come in late. So if I add a comment that the employee came in late due to traffic, my company might say, well, I'm sorry, but maybe you need to leave a little bit earlier in the morning. That's going over to attendance. But if we add a comment due to weather, because we were having a flood this morning and no one made it to work on time, corporate might say, hey, anybody who is late today due to the weather, we're not going to penalize them in attendance. So you can see how the comments could change the consequence in attendance. Okay, so if we go to page 13 in your book, Andrew Smith has a verbal warning event that Helen will need to deliver. Helen reviews the attendance tools and reviews the attendance event. Now, what we can do is log in as Helen Martin, and when I went into my database, I did not have Andrew. I only had David and I had Philip. But Philip also had, let me just go back. Philip also had a verbal warning. Okay, so if you have Andrew, great. You can use Andrew. If you don't, just use Philip. So Helen Martin logs into Workforce Dimensions to identify any attendance infractions for this week that require attention. So she's going to navigate to the attendance page, view the list of infractions, open the attendance detail for an employee, review the details, opens the calendar, and finally navigates to the employee's time card to review the exceptions. So that is similar to what we were just doing. I'd like all of you to turn to page 14 in your book. I'll put this in the chat window too, page 14. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you guys some time to log into your system and play around. So at this time, can everyone go in the upper right-hand corner and please give me a red thumbs down? Just click it one time. So that's just telling me who's here and who's ready to do the exercises and who should I wait for. So again, if you give me the red thumbs down, I'll know to wait for you. I'd like you just to give this a try, play around, have fun, and then when you're done, you're going to come back and you're going to change your red X into a green thumbs up, and that's what's going to tell me that you're done. So if you need any help from me, just let me know at any time. And again, give me the green thumbs up when you're done, please. Okay, so I see several green checks coming through. If you guys have any questions, let me know. Okay, Shara, I see that you said calendar option is not working for me. Did you get an error message or did it just not open? What was happening? It didn't redirect you to the calendar page. I'm going to share my screen. All right. So I'm just going to select one person. So I just want to verify, when you were looking, were you in the attendance detail page? So at the very top it said attendance. You saw all the details? Yeah. And then you clicked here on calendar and it just didn't do anything. It just kind of stayed there. Okay, that's weird. No circle spinning in the middle? Maybe it was just chugging? No? Okay. I don't know, just a glitch with your tenant, I guess. All right, so I think we're just waiting for one more. Just remember to give me those green thumbs up when you're done. All right, I think we're good. Erica didn't give me the red thumbs down, so she might not be there. Okay. So again, if you have any questions about anything that you saw, or even if you saw something that maybe we don't cover and you're interested in it, please feel free to send me your questions. I'll be more than happy to answer them. So in your book on page 15, we go into attendance management tasks. We can actually go to page 16. And here we're talking about, again, Helen Martin. After reviewing attendance events and information for our employees this week, Helen performed several actions to manage attendance. So now what she's going to do, and again, should be looking at this daily, adding a comment to a pay code, edit an attendance event to the appropriate type. Anytime we make edits in the employee's time card, if you want that information to go over to attendance, you have to apply your rules. Even if you made edits in attendance itself, when you want to see the results, you have to apply the rules, okay? And again, you can apply the rules to all of your employees at one time, or you can pick and choose who you want to apply them to. She wants to be able to generate and forward a written warning document to another employee with attendance infractions. When she's done with that, she wants to make sure that she marks it as being complete. She also wants to add a safety violation, which is a manual event. A safety violation doesn't come from the time card, right? They didn't come in late, they didn't leave early, they weren't sick. They might not have been wearing the right safety glasses. So that's a manual event that you can enter into the attendance editor itself. Now, one thing I want to make clear, I know I said this in your Making Solution Decision class. Whenever you make edits in your time card and you apply your rules, if those things, pay codes, exceptions, and comments are included in your attendance policy, they will go over to attendance. If you ever make an edit in your attendance module, in the attendance editor, those will not feed back to the time card. So now your time cards and your attendance don't match. So I know that, yes, you can do that if you want to do like the safety violation, right? But again, remember, they do not feed back to the time card. So if my employee had a sick day right? So I had a pay code in their time card that they were sick. And then 3 days later, they come back with a doctor's note. Someone might go into attendance and change the event from sick to sick with doctor's note. That will not feed back to the time card. So your best practice is always make your edits in your time card if you can. So when you apply the rules, they go over to attendance, and now they match. Okay. And what they're going to do is they're going to show you an exercise where you're adding a safety violation in attendance, and you might realize, oh, I added it to the wrong person, or the manager might go, oh, you know, they put the glasses on right away as soon as I said something to them. Let me delete that, right? So you can also delete an event in the attendance editor as well. So as far as the time card, we've already gone in here. We've already made edits. We added a pay code. We added a comment. There's something that I want to point out, and this is on page 17 in your book. And for those of you coming from Workforce Central or iSeries, this is something that is new. I want you to take a look at this example here where I have that the employee came in at 11:15. The employee is late. So I received an exception that the employee was late. Now, let me make this up. Let me say that the employee completely forgot to swipe in themselves. So I had to go up to Peter and I had to say, Peter, you didn't swipe in this morning. What time did you come in? And he goes, oh, I came in at 11:15 because I lost my badge. But I was late because there was traffic. Okay? So when I add or go to this punch and I do a right click, that comment option comes up. And here's what is new. It says comment on. I can choose, do I want to comment on the exception, the red bar, or do I want to comment on the punch? And some people might be like, well, what's the difference? Why do they give you that option? Why is that important? Well, first of all, I might say, I want to comment on the exception. I want to comment why they were late. So when I comment on the exception, I'm commenting they were late because they ran into traffic. Then I do another right click and I say, okay, now I want to comment on the punch. I want to add a comment that he lost his badge. So I'm commenting on why did he come in late, and then I'm also commenting on why didn't he punch in himself. Okay? So that's, again, fairly new. And then you can also comment on pay code amounts. You can never comment on a pay code. If you do a right click on the pay code itself, nothing will happen. And you can never, ever comment on a blank cell. Has to be on a punch or an exception or a pay code amount. Those are the only two places where you can add comments. You can also add comments in the schedule, but we're talking about the time card. And then again, whenever you make edits, you're always going to have to apply the rules in order to see the results. So now I'm on page 18 in your book. When you click Apply Rules, and I've taken you through demos where there are many places where you could apply the rules, your option is that you can choose that you want to apply the rules using the default start date. Now, when you use the default start date, the system looks at 3 dates. It looks at the sign-off date. It looks at the process through date. And it looks at the last run date of the processor. And whichever date is the earliest, it's going to start at that point and process all the way up to right now. So let's say that Monday, this past Monday was the 8th. And let's say that I processed payroll, so I signed off my previous pay period, and my previous pay period ended on Saturday, so that would have been the 6th. So my sign-off date is 7/6. Now, let's say that I set up my processor as a scheduled event where it runs every single night at 2 a.m. So if that's the case, then my processor ran today, 7/12, at 2 a.m. And when I configured that to run automatically every night at 2 a.m., I incorporated a 1-day lag time, just for my managers to kind of catch up with all of their edits. So that would have meant if it ran today on the 12th, it would have only processed information through the 11th. So again, if I use the default start date, the system is going to look at these 3 dates and say, okay, well, the 6th is the earliest. However, the 6th is signed off. And you guys know if your time period is signed off, you can't make any edits to it. So it's really going to process from 7/7 all the way up to today's date. Okay? If for whatever reason I said, no, you know what, I only want to apply the rules to Monday and Tuesday, I could use the second option, select a date. I can enter the start date of Monday, the end date of Tuesday, and then it would only apply the rules to those days. And then I just want to show you, this is something that we've been talking about on page 19 in your book. If I made an edit, now again, I'm in attendance making this edit. There is an option that if I were to go to the pencil, I can choose that I want to edit the event. So I get this edit event slider. I could go to the event and bring down the drop down, and I could see a whole list of every event that I have selected in my system. So again, the employee, in this case, they're saying my employee had a no call, no show, and then the employee comes back and says, well, that's not right. I was out sick, and here's my doctor's note. I called in, you weren't here, so so-and-so took a message, and they must have never told you. And then the manager goes, oh, yeah, you're right. So if the manager makes the edit here in attendance, again, it does not feed back to the time card. So my best practice is not to do this. It's to do it in the time card, but you can. And once I do that, you'll notice an option down at the bottom that you can save it and apply the rules. So whether you make the edit in the time card or in attendance, you need to apply your rules. So I'd like you guys to turn to page 20 in your book. So Helen Martin receives a doctor's note from an employee who missed a shift on Monday to go to the doctor. So instead of a no call, no show, it should have been a different event. So again, they're going to take you through this exercise. Not that you should do it this way. They're going to take you through the exercise. So in the chat window, I'm going to say, let's go ahead and we'll do an exercise on page 20. Okay. So go ahead, give that a try. If you need my help at any time, let me know. And again, please give me a green thumbs up when you're done, please. And yes, if you want to give me the red thumbs down, let me know that you're here. That would be great. And then just give me the green thumbs up and let me know when you're done. Awesome. Yes, I'm just sharing my screen with you, so your results should look like mine. And for those of you who are done, any questions, anything you'd like me to go over or review, please let me know. Okay, so again, I put the results up on my screen to share it with you. So again, for the first, you should now have a sick with a doctor's note for 8 hours. And if you remember the policy, the employee did not receive any points. Remember, they had 99 freebies. So again, I want to track it, but there's no consequence. Okay, just remember that. Give me that green thumbs up when you're done, if you haven't done so already. And we're going to be starting up on page 21. So the next thing that we're talking about is going to be documents, again on page 21. All right, so it looks like everyone is all set. Good. Now, as far as documents, again, we have the pencil. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to share with you my screen. So documents are also going to be over on or under that pencil. Now, we talked about documents a little bit in your MSc class. Now, what I'm doing is I'm going back to my home page. And another thing that I want to show you that they didn't really point out in your book, that when I come back to my home page, because we resolved the issues with David, remember we kind of changed the event so he didn't have a suspension anymore. Now when I come back to my tile, it says one policy action is required. Now, Philip Smith has a verbal warning. Now, if I were to click go and I get the details, it tells me that he has a verbal warning, but it also tells me that he has a document attached to it. This really doesn't make it verbal anymore, does it? But it's just an exercise. So I see that, yes, there is a document, and this is a link where I could click on it if I wanted to, and it would show me the document. The other thing I can do is if I go to the very bottom, I can again click See Full Attendance Details. So I might want to check this out first, going into attendance. And I'm going to see that, yes, he has a sick day, and this is on, what, 6/26. So when I look at his sick day, he was sick for 8 hours. And notice that this one says time, right? So it's just telling me he missed 8 hours of time. And the second line tells me that he received 1 point for being sick. And again, he did get a verbal warning. So what it tells me here is that he hit a balance of 3 points that triggered that verbal warning. And again, it also tells me here that, yes, there's a document associated with it. So a couple of things I want to show you. If I click on the pencil and I say I want to display the policy, this is another policy that you guys were talking about. And if I click rules, it tells me that if you hit between 3 and 4.99 points, you're going to get a verbal warning. If you have between 5 and 6.99, you're going to get a written warning. 7 to 7.99, you're going to be terminated, right? So 7 and above, you're terminated. So that's my policy. So I'm like, okay, well, now that makes sense to me. Now I know why he's getting the verbal warning. But again, there's a document attached to it. So if I click the pencil, I also have a couple of options where I could update the action, mark it as being complete. I could forward a document, or I could view the document. If I click View Document, your documents are created in Word, and then they're uploaded to Attendance. So when I said that I wanted to view the document, I got this tab in the lower left-hand corner of my screen. So if I click click the icon, it's going to open Word, and it's going to show me my document, and I'll share it with you. Hang on a second. So the document is just an example. Your document can say whatever you want it to say, and you'll notice that I have data tags where his name automatically got filled in, his hire date automatically got filled in. So I would be able to read the document, making sure that it says what I want it to say, and I could also enable editing if I ever wanted to make any changes to the document for him. I could do that. And now I'm going to close it. So I'm like, okay, document looks great. So now if I were to go back to the pencil and I say, okay, well, now I want to forward the document. That's going to open this forward screen. Now, see under 2, these are all the people that I can forward it to. I also have an option for additional recipients. And I can enter a subject and a message. The document itself will actually be sent as an attachment. Okay? Now, when I forward the document, I want to think of, well, who am I? If I'm the manager and I'm going to deliver this to the employee, I may not be forwarding it to anybody. When I was viewing it in Word, I would print it out. And then I would say to the employee, hey, meet me in my office at 12. We have something we need to review. I would review the document with them. And we might have a policy that the employee would have to sign it, I sign it, and then we send it to HR to be filed. Okay, so again, I'm not forwarding it to anybody. But if I decide that the system administrator is that person who sits in my HR department, now, as the administrator, I may forward this to the employee's manager and say, hey, deliver this and let me know when you're done. Send it back to me. So now I might be forwarding it, okay? So I'm just going to cancel out of here. And now when I click the pencil again, I say, okay, well, I already met with Philip. We discussed it. He signed it. I signed it. We're done with it. So now I want to update the action. Now, remember, I could have done this on the slider from the home page. But if I update the action, I'm going to say, yep, I sat with him today. We completed it. And then I can freestyle type any notes. You know, he wasn't too happy, whatever. He argued the point, whatever. I can type whatever I want here. and then I'm going to list it, click Save. Now, how do I know that it's done? It doesn't really give me that information here on attendance as much as I would like it to. If I go back in the upper left, and let's say that I go to the landing page. If I go to the landing page and I expand all others, because now I don't have any people with actions anymore, and I go down to Philip, you can see his verbal warning, I completed it. And I completed it on today's date. Okay, so you do have record of it. And if I go to my home, in the Manage Attendance tile, I don't have anybody who requires any actions anymore. We've addressed both of them. Okay. So what I'd like you guys to do is I'd like you to turn to page 22 in your book. And I'll put this in the chat window. So go ahead and give me the red thumbs down. File. And I'm going to expand my all others. And I'm going to select Philip Smith again. And I'm going to use my icon that I want to go into attendance details. And if I wanted to add a manual event like we were talking about, if I click the icon up here, up at the top, the upper left, I can click Add Event. And I can enter today's date. And now I'm going to choose Safety Violation. There is no amount, and it's not a mandatory field. I'm going to say I just saw him at 11:25 a.m., and I'm going to save and apply my rules. So now he's going to get a safety violation for today, and if we looked at our policy as we did earlier, he's going to receive a verbal warning immediately. So you can see my circle spinning, so it's calculating. So what it's actually doing is it's looking at the employee's people record, making sure they have the attendance license, finding out what set of rules they're assigned to, applying those rules, and it's calculating. So there's my safety violation for 2 points, and again, my employee did receive a verbal warning for that. They're also getting a written warning because that kind of threw them over the top to 5 points. So if I have a change of heart, I can go to my pencil and also say I want to delete that safety violation. So it says, are you sure? And I can say yes, and now it's gone. Okay. Now just remember too, when I added the safety violation, I did save it, and now I'm deleting it and saving it, so that would be in my audit trail as well. Okay. So your last exercise is on page 25 in your book. So again, go ahead and give that a try. Let me know if you have any questions. And again, give me the green thumbs up when you're done, please.